And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, angels and demons and monsters and serpents. This is Brothers of the Serpent podcast, and we are coming to you not live from the 10 by 10 by 10 tangent cube of science, where we are nestled amongst the dusty bones of an ancient seabed high atop the Edwards Plateau. You know, I've been told by some people that I should say this slower. Angels and demons and monsters and serpents is what I'm saying. Some of the stuff
it is pretty fast.
Some of the stuff people come up with are like, well, what are you saying exactly? I'm like, that's not it. It's angels, okay?
You rattle it off pretty fast. I can't do it that fast.
So we're doing a classic Snake Bros episode.
Yep.
Yeah. So we got some. Well, Kyle's getting into he's getting into the response game. So we're gonna do some responses.
We've always responded. We just didn't make a particular video dedicated to the response.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
But remember that one time we did this show and it was after the Weinstein guy went on Joe Rogan about UFOs?
Yeah. We did that with Grimerica, right? Yeah. It was
Darren's just like, so the whole show was up.
Yeah, can we talk about something else? Some other podcast? Yeah. Yeah, I remember. Yeah, I mean, we do respond. I'm just telling you guys, Kyle's getting into the response business. He's watching these videos. He's like, we have to respond to this. Yeah, okay. I'm down. So yeah,
I also want to do the classic Snake Bros intro. Oh, and I never loaded up the. Hold on, give me a second.
Oh yeah.
Give me a second.
Yeah, so classic Snake Bros means that we'll do space weather news, which we haven't done in a while. I know. I'm not calling it out yet. I'm not calling it out yet.
I gotta get the button ready.
But it's actually timely because there is some other solar stuff. You know, we need to get Ben Davidson on. I need to invite him on the show.
I think it's ready.
Is it ready?
I think so.
All right. Well, let's do some space weather news from spaceweather.com. What's up in space? Minor geomagnetic storms are possible this week. There are minor G1 class geomagnetic storms possible later this week as Earth enters a stream of solar wind flowing from a large hole in the sun's atmosphere. I always want to do this in the 50s, radio guy voice. If a storm occurs, it will most likely happen on May 23rd when a glancing blow of CME arrives, adding its power to that of the solar wind stream.
That's great. Yeah, I like that. That's good.
Current conditions, solar wind speed is 545.7 kilometers per second. The density is a very low 1.09 protons per cubic centimeter. The current sunspot number is 67. And the, where is it? The neutron count, very low, minus 5.7%. It is low. That is your space weather news for the week. Very short. Well, we got the KP index, 1.67, quiet. But the 24-hour max was a 4, which is unsettled, right in the middle of the range there. So the other thing
but how's solar cycle 25 going? Has it been ramping up and up and up? Or are we just, it seems to be kind of the same? Or?
Well, yeah, so they have a section on the website for space weather that says like spotless days, percentage of the year, how many days with no sunspots, right? So for 2022, there was 1 day with no sunspots. 2023, 0 days. 2024, 0 days. 2025, 0 days. Right? So, what's going on back here?
Freaking kids steal my bell.
Oh.
There you have it, folks.
I was like,
space weather news. Finally, again, now we know. Now you know. And you heard it here, not first.
Yeah.
Not first.
But yeah, I think it's interesting. I mean, in 2021, there were 64 days with no known sunspots. 2019 or 2020, 208 days. Right? 2019, 281 days. And then you can see it going back down. 2018, 221. 2017, 104. 2016, 32. 2015, 0 days. It's like going up and down. But of course, 2025, 0 days with no sunspots, but we're barely into the year yet. So, but the other interesting thing, this is like tangentially related to the sun because it's how solar weather affects the Earth, and this is why I would love to get Ben Davidson on, the guy from Spaceweather News. The Earth's magnetic field, the geomagnetic excursion, the way the North Pole is moving, it keeps accelerating. It's headed towards Siberia at like 50 kilometers a year. Yeah. This is like, it's faster than it's been in a very long time. So I think it's probably signaling an imminent collapse. Something weird is happening in the...
But why should it collapse? I mean, just because it's moving. It seems strange to me that it would just collapse because it's moving.
Yeah.
Like, how can it collapse?
The southern one isn't moving. So something like this is happening.
Yeah, or it's just or it's just doing this. Right? Like it's still a straight axis.
Right, but okay, so
the center of the magnetic field,
the dynamo is supposed to be, now of course this is theoretical, but it's based on seismic data. Some of the stuff we were talking about with Mark Young last week was, how do we know all this stuff deep in the Earth? Seismic data, right? Yeah. So the idea is that there's probably a big ball of iron in there, but it's actually an inner and outer core. The inner core is solid, and around the outside of it is liquid, and it's flowing, circling around it. And this has created an electromagnet, a giant magnet.
Yeah.
Hot metal moving really fast around solid metal.
So there's got to be some turbulence in the moving metal, right? There's going to be these eddies and stuff. It can't possibly just all move as one nice piece. It's going to be going faster in the...
Yeah, it has its own jet streams, whatever.
Yeah. So I can imagine that might affect the tilt of the axis, or like whether the axis, because you have the globe. We got props in here. Bring this globe over here. So we got this axis, and it's not perfect, but it's like over here. Not that far, but
you're upside down here.
Of course, upside down now. Yeah. But yeah, what I'm saying is instead of imagining the axis as bending, it's like it's just tilting. So it's not going straight through the center of the planet, but it would be like this.
Yes, which is weird if
you think it's bending?
No, it's weird if the very small core, the relatively small, right? If the relatively small core at the center of the planet is the source, but the magnetic axis is moving out of the core.
Out of the core, yeah. Okay.
That's a little strange.
So it probably is bending then, like you're saying.
It may be bending. I don't know. I'm just saying that we know this has happened before. There's geophysical data for reversals. It's recorded in volcanic material. Like one time all the magnetic stuff in the volcanic material is tilted one direction, and then it's the other direction. On the ocean floors, we've talked about this. We talked about this with Randall in Cosmographia multiple times. Okay, so Kyle's looking up, do magnetic polarities bend? Yes, magnetic field lines, which indicate the direction of magnetic polarity, can bend.
Yeah, of course, but I want to know if this axis, okay, magnetic axes bend.
I also have a computer here right in front of me, ladies and gentlemen.
Objects? No, not objects. I want to know, how do I ask this question? I mean, it seems plausible that they could, like all the different shapes of magnets. You think that axis of magnetism, the polarity, like the positive,
it shouldn't bend.
Should be perfectly straight.
I think so.
Why is it then? But the outside is this huge loop.
Yeah,
so they are bending.
Yeah.
So I don't see any reason why the axis can't bend as well. It just doesn't. It's hard for me to imagine that just means there's going to be a collapse.
Well, no. I mean that it's. I guess what I'm saying is that it's unstable.
Yeah, for sure. It's unstable.
Yeah, and the South Atlantic anomaly, the South Atlantic magnetic anomaly, is both increasing in size and also beginning to sort of break up. It's you know, it's a spot on the globe, and it's sort of, if it begins to break up and start moving around, like what I've been reading is that these are all indicators of an unstable field, and the fact that the magnetic field strength of the Earth has been going down drastically over the last 200 years or something like that, or maybe more. So this is why I want to get Ben Davidson on, because he talks a lot about this stuff. And the point is that,
of course, I think we covered this in like episode 3. This is why you can't do magic anymore, right?
yeah. The magnetic field is too weak.
They gave us daylight savings.
Yeah.
And the magnetism is too weak. So
yeah.
we're just, yeah. I wonder how that would affect radio if we had like a ridiculously strong electromagnetic field. All the radio, communications, Wi-Fi, all that stuff. You think that would be like severely... Like
Maybe.
if you just put a huge magnetic field in the way, it's going to mess up.
Maybe. I think that's a great question. I mean, I'm not a radio engineer, you know, but I'm also imagining the sun is loud.
Yeah.
And so the Earth's magnetic field sort of
protects us from
is
that.
a shield. Yeah.
So it can also shield, yeah.
This is the point. If the magnetic field becomes very weak because it's becoming unstable, maybe it isn't going to reverse.
Then we get zapped.
Yeah, then even minor solar storms are a big problem if they're aimed at us.
That's a good point. Okay.
And you know that I think that some people are saying that it can have effects on the jet streams, the movement of the atmosphere, right? It's based on how much insulation, like the amount of energy coming from the sun, is getting into the atmosphere, and that's based on how strong the magnetic field is of the Earth. So we have these nice jet streams, but if the sun is just blazing because the magnetic field is low, then it can disrupt the jet streams, and then we get like what they call, you know, the polar vortex collapses or whatever, where it's blowing Arctic air down to Texas.
Hell yes.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
Yes. Okay. Interesting.
So I pulled up.
So maybe it's not a collapse, but it's just like a weakening.
Yeah.
Slowly over
It's
time.
called a.
I mean, if we lost it, like I remember
It's called a geomagnetic excursion, right? It's moving.
Yeah.
So on the NOAA website, good old NOAA.gov, they say magnetic poles are commonly understood as positions on the Earth's surface where the geomagnetic field is vertical, i.e. perpendicular to the ellipsoid. These north and south positions, called dip poles, do not need to be and are not currently antipodal. In other words, opposite each other. Mm-hmm. In principle, the dip poles can be found by conducting a magnetic survey to determine where the field is vertical. In other words, if you're standing in the right place on the globe, the magnetic field's coming straight out of it, right? So it's vertical right there. So you just move around until you find out that the field is vertical, and that's where the pole is, the magnetic one. In practice, the geomagnetic field is vertical on oval-shaped loci traced on a daily basis with considerable variation from one day to the next. Other definitions of geomagnetic poles depend on the way the poles are computed from a geomagnetic model. And it has been long understood that dip poles migrate over time. In 1831, James Clark Ross located the North Dip Pole position in northern Canada. Natural Resources Canada tracked the North Magnetic Pole, which is slowly drifting across the Canadian Arctic, by periodically carrying out magnetic surveys to reestablish the pole's location from 1948 to 1994. An international collaboration led by a French fundraising association added 2 locations of the North Magnetic Pole in 2001 and 2007. The most recent survey determined that the pole is moving approximately north-northwest at 55 kilometers per year. And that's all they say.
North-northwest. I mean,
I just think this is interesting. And, you know, if you look at the timing...
How can it be moving? I don't understand how it can be moving north-northwest.
From Canada. It's headed towards Siberia.
Okay. So it's moving... Never mind. This globe is too small.
Listen, north-northwest means it's going around in a circle.
Okay.
Right?
I was gonna say, like, if you're at the North Pole, like, the only direction you can go is south.
If we're in Canada here and you're going north-northwest, you're basically going around in a circle around the Arctic, right? But it is supposed to be headed this way. The point that I'm making, though, is that, and we have discussed this many times on the show, and I'm not trying to be doom porny, but I think it is interesting that we know the magnetic field is weakening, and the pole position of the northern dip pole is moving faster and faster. It's accelerating.
Yeah.
It's leaving Canada and headed towards Russia. Right? It's just like... But the point is that we're long overdue. If the timing of the previous reversals, if you take that into account, we're long overdue for a reversal. So it sort of makes sense. This doesn't mean it's going to happen. And no one knows how long they take or how long it lasts either. Like, if it goes into full reversal, there's presumably going to be some kind of collapse beforehand before it reforms, because it sort of dissolves into chaos. At least it's what I've been reading is correct. It sort of dissolves into chaos, and then eventually the chaos stops and it reforms, and the poles are reversed. The southern magnetic pole will be on the northern part of the globe, and the northern pole magnetic pole will be on the southern part of the globe. Right?
Mm-hmm.
But it may take, a couple of days? It might take 50 years. No one knows how long.
I wonder if it's like the somewhat like the solar situation, where you have these bands of magnetism, these polar bands that are moving from the pole down to the equator.
Yeah.
Now, that's a sort of a way to look at it on the exterior, but we don't know what's going on inside the sun either. But there appear to be these magnetically polarized bands, and they move towards, once they reach the equator, they annihilate. What if something like that is happening in the Earth's core, but at a very slow rate?
Yeah.
So they're getting closer to each other, and somehow it's like getting distorted, and eventually they just annihilate.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean,
and the next cycle is the reverse polarity of the sun.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, the sun's polarity reverses every 11 years or so.
It's not like its magnetism shuts down for long periods of time. It just flips.
Yeah. But it's also really fast. It's an 11-year cycle.
Yeah, it is.
So if the Earth cycle is 750,000 years long, then how long is it going to take for the magnetic stuff to reform in reverse? But the sun is just a giant version of whatever's happening in the inner core. I mean, that's really inaccurate thing to say. Magnetically, what I mean is like the sun is just a huge version of it. It doesn't have a lithosphere.
I don't see it being something that would be concerning for life.
Yeah, you just need,
because of the fact that we have
need 1 million SPF.
Just because we've had life on the planet for much longer than this supposed cycle.
Yeah.
So
it's not
so my point
associated with mass extinction events.
Yeah. So maybe electronics is gonna really suck for that. But
yeah, grid will go down.
Yeah. We'll have to build pyramids then. Like giant stone
you need
triangles and
varas and pyramids.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think being outside would suck. For a while, we don't have fur.
Yeah, it could suck.
It doesn't necessarily mean, the climate might be weird. That's what I'm saying, if it affects jet streams and everything. I don't know. This is why I want to get Davidson on and talk about it.
Okay.
And then we can go full doom porn with Davidson. He'll be like, we're all going to die in 10 years. You need to have a bunker. I don't know. I just think it's interesting.
It is, for sure.
Yeah. And the magnetic field weakening is concerning. Like that, we don't want that to happen.
Yeah.
Because if we lose it completely, then we're in trouble.
Yeah.
Because then you lose your atmosphere.
I was going to bring up. Like Mars, apparently this happened, or at least it's been theorized that it used to have magnetic like a strong magnetic field, and then it collapsed, and then it blew away its atmosphere.
Yeah. So I think two things with Mars, because Venus doesn't really have a magnetic
You
field.
just need to learn how to breathe solar wind, man.
Yeah. Yeah, Venus doesn't really have a strong magnetic field at all. Its magnetic field, I think, is caused by, I don't want to get this wrong. It has one, but it's not an inner core magnetic field.
Mm.
It's very weak, but it has an incredibly thick atmosphere. So it's closer to the sun. So how come it hasn't lost its atmosphere when it doesn't have a magnetic field protecting it? I think because Venus may have lots of volcanism.
Mm.
So
it's
or
shielded
in
a
some
different
way,
way.
in some way, Venus is outgassing.
Yeah.
Mars no longer is no longer geologically active. Really, it
Yeah.
has a couple of gigantic volcanoes, but they've been extinct for forever. So it's not its mantle is no longer providing gas to the atmosphere to replenish what is lost. Earth also loses air to the sun, but we have enough volcanoes for now, at least, in the recent geological past to replenish it. But there is some interesting.
What about the gas giants? Do they have massive electromagnetic fields?
Yes. Yeah.
Huh.
But I do think there's some interesting. I've seen some interesting ideas people have been posting about evidence for higher atmospheric pressure at sea level on Earth in the past because we had higher amounts of volcanism, like a lot more volcanoes, right?
So the atmosphere just grew?
Yeah.
Okay.
All that gas coming out of the mantle is
Yeah.
basically providing gas, and then it's sitting here, and like the more it's outgassing, you got this bigger and bigger envelope.
yeah.
So pressure at sea level is much higher.
Yeah.
You know, so you have
That could be beneficial.
yeah.
I mean, things would get
this
huge.
might be why things were huge.
Yeah, 'cause you
Exactly.
have tons of oxygen, and you know,
Yes.
it's all concentrated.
Right. Exactly. So
Well, you have tons of oxygen just in a smaller space.
yeah, yeah,
That's cool.
yeah. I thought this idea was really interesting that
And then if you had a stronger electromagnetic field, you could maintain that larger atmosphere for
longer, right?
So
even
as
when
the,
you're
as
even
the
if,
magnetic field is diminishing, we're losing the ozone layer.
yeah, we're losing the atmosphere. So magnetic field and volcanism dropped off sharply, and I think that maybe combined with Milankovitch cycles.
So strange too to think about volcanism as being like a life-giving process when it's like so deadly. I mean, it's, you know, pumping out all this toxic gas and everything else.
Yeah,
It's raining acid and ash everywhere, and it's darkening the sky and
but I think
burning you.
any rocky world that has a gas envelope only has it because its interior processes are outgassing.
I know. It's just, that's what I'm saying. It's like, it's cool.
Yes,
When you
before
look at- it's like-
before this world could bear life, we have to set it on fire.
Like basically you need these energy sources,
yeah,
right? Otherwise everything's going to freeze. You'll just be a ball of ice.
Yeah,
So then you have your planets that are too much on the energy side. There's just tons of energy and nothing can live there.
yeah,
And then you have the Goldilocks zone, just enough energy.
yeah,
So it's like you have to have it. And then even if you get rid of it, then it's a ball of ice.
yeah. And then of course, then the question is like, does stuff live there anyway?
Yeah.
I
Dude.
I would not be surprised if
What?
there's life in Jupiter.
I know. I love thinking of the Jupiter
Giant
whales.
balloon whales. Yeah.
Exactly. Every time the word Jupiter comes up, I think of giant whales swimming around in there.
Yeah.
What about that moon that is outgassing? Remember we were looking at that? It's one of Jupiter's moons that's like they're really looking into, and it's like a ball of ice.
Europa.
essentially. Europa. And occasionally it shoots out a jet,
Yeah.
comes out of the ice. So there's obviously some kind of thermal activity going
Yeah.
on in this. and they're saying it could be from the tidal forces of Jupiter, kind of just massaging the ice ball.
Yeah, it's massaging the rocky part of the ice ball.
Yeah,
and it's thermally active.
It's got oceans underneath some of these, like
miles and miles of water, estimated like 40 to 60 miles deep.
We gotta go in there, man.
I mean, the deepest parts of the Earth's oceans are 9 miles.
Like its gravity is so low that you could go so deep and not.
Yeah, the pressure wouldn't be so high.
Extreme pressures.
Yeah, but you also have several miles of ice sitting on top of that.
But it's still its
low
weight
gravity,
is low because it's a little moon.
It's floating,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's cool to think of that. Just like there could be massive intelligent civilizations.
Oh yeah.
Living in that ocean.
Yeah.
Water beings
that have no idea
that
there's
even
a universe,
a sun or a universe. Yeah, they're not looking.
They don't know anything.
The sky is a wall of ice.
Yeah,
it was all true.
Yeah, it's an ice wall.
Yeah, that's all you get. When you get to the end, you hit the ice. When you go to the other end, you get the fire water.
Yeah. Yeah, the concept of if they're living at the bottom to get up to the surface, they have the reverse issue, right? It's low pressure.
Yeah. Well, it's the same as us when we go up to the sky.
I mean, the reverse issue of us trying to dive down to where they are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the water. Okay,
yeah.
I was thinking of us trying to.
So like they're like, let's have an expedition straight up.
Yeah.
40 miles straight up, and you hit just a solid wall.
And they're drilling.
And it's from
like,
upside down. You have to drill up.
That's what
sucks.
the jets are, is they're in there and they're like got this big drilling rig and they're like, let's see what's further up.
And then it's and they all get sucked out.
Yeah, the machine and everything just and then we're like, oh my gosh, look.
Wow.
Holy crap. Damn
Every expedition that tries to leave the ice wall disappears without a trace. Gets sucked out into the vacuum of space. Yeah. I don't know. I think that's amazing. And then why does it have that much water? Why does this one ball have a 40-mile deep ocean on it? Now, again,
maybe it captured a comet and the comet just melted.
Yeah.
They got all these rocks in them and everything. It's just rocky. So the rocks go to the center. Like I don't know. That's my guess.
It would be a really big comet. I mean, Europa is not a small moon, It's big.
Jupiter's
a
hefty guy. You can capture a big comet. I don't know. I have no answers.
I don't have any answers either. I just love these questions.
Me too.
Yeah.
I like to imagine.
And then you were pointing out like, oh yeah, nothing can live in the high energy ones, but maybe. I mean,
yeah.
Did you see that? There's occasionally news from Chernobyl. People are going in there and doing research, and they're finding like algae and bacteria. They're just living on gamma rays, and they're eating the radioactive shit, and it's like,
wow.
So yes, some life is. It's the class. Where's the button? There.
Life finds a way.
Like every time.
Bingo.
We're like, oh my God, it's too radioactive. Nothing can live in there. Nope. There's mold in there eating the radioactive shit.
That's cool.
And Mercury. Can Mercury have life on it? Maybe under the surface. High energy environments may be good for life if in some forms.
At some point.
Yeah, I mean, I there were plenty of science fiction stories that I read where the way you differentiated between what kind of life it was by how fast their energy environment was how quick their metabolisms are and how long their lifespan is, right? So really low environment, like life that came up on an ice ball planet or something that was way out. They just had long lives and they moved incredibly slowly because everything was low energy, but they lived for thousands of years.
Yeah.
And then you have the guys that came from the inner world. They live for 20 years or less, and they're incredibly high energy. They just burn it quick.
I always think about that one. Was it Niven? The Wantu?
Oh,
The neutrino
that was
guy?
Frederick Pohl, I think. Yeah, not Wantu that lives on the star.
He's like inside the star, and he's
Yeah.
like this string of neutrinos or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
And then whenever he has to move to another star, he gets out there and he's like super cold and he hates it.
Yep.
And it takes him forever.
Yeah.
But he can use the energy in the star to like when the star is getting close to dying, he's like, okay, I gotta
move. Yeah.
And he propels himself in the right direction to get to another star.
Yeah. Yeah, he was made up of, what are they called? Tachyons, like theoretical
is it
particles.
Tachyons?
Yeah.
Okay, I couldn't remember.
Yeah, he's made up of like some kind of theoretical particle that, yeah.
But yeah, he's just dancing around like the really hot young stars.
Yeah, that's what he likes.
He's
Yeah.
just like in there
Yeah.
making rivals.
Yeah. He would make offspring because he
Yeah.
was lonely.
Yeah.
And then eventually they would become too strong and then he'd blow their star up. He's like starting to get worried that they're going to
Yeah.
blow up his. And it's like, he can't let him know what star he's in. So he was doing dark forest stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a really interesting book.
Yeah. Yeah. That whole book was based on how his actions, that entity's actions, affected multiple different worlds and civilizations with people on it.
Yeah.
Because he starts looking around. He started thinking, he's philosophizing about the universe because he lives forever.
Yeah.
And he's looking around at the universe. He's like, wow, this stuff's
Run out.
it's gonna burn out.
Yeah.
So he
definitely wasn't a steady state guy.
He picked a group of stars and he tweaked their internals to make them accelerate.
Yeah.
And the sun, our sun, was one of those. And so it took the whole solar system with it. The sun just started to accelerate. And it eventually became relativistic.
Yeah.
So it's headed off in some direction at 99% of light speed. So the whole universe like shrinks down to like a couple of circles on
Yeah.
either end, in the direction of travel.
Yeah.
So there's this one bright spot, which is all the stars of the entire universe in the direction of travel, and then there's like a red spot down here or whatever. Eventually, it went away.
Yeah, it was the.
So the
Doppler.
sky is just pitch black, and there's a bright spot here in the sun. And then eventually,
He was doing that to make it last longer. It was like a way.
Yeah. Yeah, it was an experiment.
Yeah.
And then once the sun became relativistic, the human civilization on it that was stuck there, because the planets and everything go with it.
Yeah.
They got stuck there. Then they're relativistic. So billions and billions of years are passing in the regular
Normal
universe for each one of their years. And then eventually Wantu realizes that all the stars are burning out because now billions of years have passed. And he's like, I need to go to that one that I
need to
sent
find
off.
that
Yeah,
one.
but he's
Yeah.
tachyon, so he can move really fast. So then he goes and lives in the sun. And then he's like, what are these things on this cold rock?
Yeah.
What a crazy story.
That was a great story.
Yeah. Sci-fi, dude. Can't beat it, man. For crazy ideas. All right.
That's good stuff.
We just spent 30 minutes.
That's what it's all about.
That is what it's all
This
about.
is a classic Snake Bros episode.
It is classic.
All right. Let me share this. So I listened to the this is my news story section.
Okay.
So the news story is not a written story, but it's the Joe Rogan podcast.
Yeah.
I listened to his interview with Zahi Hawass. And just generally speaking, like, it was tough to listen to. Zahi is constantly interrupting him, and I know that there's a language barrier issue. That seemed pretty clear because so many times when Joe was trying to make a point, like, he just did not get it, did not understand. And then I could get what Zahi was responding with and tell like where he was going or what he thought Joe was saying. As a listener, I'm like, okay, he thinks he's talking about this. Joe would not realize it.
Yeah, because you're in the
And
moment. Yeah.
So basically, they're just talking past each other so many times.
I didn't even try.
I'm
to
sure
listen
if
to it.
he, anybody.
Kyle's
like,
doing the work, folks. I didn't even try.
I had
listen
to. I wanted to hear like this is like this is what you want. You want to hear Zahi in a 2-hour freaking interview talking to somebody who's just going to ask him straight up.
Yeah.
Like it was great. But yeah, he was not an endearing character. Let's put it that way, in my opinion. And I have to say, I do understand to some degree, like where he's coming from is like just too many people and too many theories, and I don't want to have to address all of them. Like it's just too much.
Yeah, I
totally
say the same thing.
I totally get that.
Too many people, too many theories.
Not a problem. But there was this one thing, and I just have to commend Joe, because like when they were talking about the Great Pyramid and who built it and how it was built, and Zahi was laying out this whole system, or like this whole set of evidence. He was kind of building his case for why he knows exactly that it was Khufu, right? And at some point, I think the final best piece of evidence, other than like, well, there were workers and there were barracks and there were all these tombs of people who were whatever buried who had been working on it, and he kept saying like it was a national project. Okay, fine. But that still doesn't tell you who built it. But the actual evidence that he had for who built it was that there was writing about the casing of the pyramid, and it was Khufu Khufu's workmen were casing it. And there's all this writing about them casing the pyramid. And Joe is like, well, I mean, what if they just cased it? And I'm like, bingo, dude. That's exactly
if they
right.
just made the casing. But okay, so I didn't listen, admittedly, but what writing? Like in stone? No papyrus from the Old Kingdom exists, is to my knowledge. So is he talking about inscriptions?
I believe he's talking about inscriptions. I'd have to listen to it again.
Okay.
I know.
I guess I need to listen to it. I'm sorry.
I know he talked about a relief in a piece of limestone. I can't remember what, but there was apparently some kind of writing where it was like the workers were casing the pyramid with Tura limestone, and they were Khufu's workers. And I think even Jason was telling me this too.
I remember about that, yeah.
A couple years ago on the Egypt trip. So I wanted to just show this bit of my slideshow on the pyramid's construction, or anatomy of the pyramid. This is the portion of the presentation that is the superstructure. And this is very interesting to me. And Russ and I have been like looking at all these pyramids, and every single one of them that has been destroyed to some degree where you can see the internals, they have a superstructure. So this is the pyramid of Maidum. And as you can see, it's got this like ziggurat sort of step pyramid style. And these are finished casing stones. And then you have this massive pile of rubble out here, and there's some casing stones down there, and all of this core masonry. This is a completely different era of construction. There's a couple of different degrees. These are supposedly like 75-degree angle walls, which is very common for a mastaba. So you have what they call true pyramids versus, I don't know what the other one's called, mastabas, basically. Yeah. Untrue, not true pyramids. A true pyramid is a pyramid that did not
start out
begin
as a mastaba,
as an accretion style. That's really what it is. It's accretion. So they start out with a thing. Anyway, we'll get there. This is some of the casing stones, and I don't know if this is the 75-degree angle of the original mastaba. It doesn't look like it. This looks much steeper. So I think this is the actual outside of the pyramid at the base.
Yeah, you can see the rubble above it.
I mean, that looks so freaking steep.
It is very steep.
it just looks so ridiculously steep.
Yeah.
But what they say is this pyramid was cased and the core masonry was built out and it was turned into a full pyramid of the same proportions as the Great Pyramid. So it had the same angle. It was a smaller one, but it had the same angle. So it was proportionally the same. So this is it. Finished casing stones. But whoever built this was not the same people. So this is a diagram of it that from Petrie's book. And you can see Petrie is showing here the various theoretical stages of the mastaba. So it starts out, this is the first mastaba, and he's using this descending passageway as a way to kind of understand at least where the first rendition of this pyramid was. Because it was uncommon for the descending passageway to begin in the ground. Like, so you wouldn't have a mastaba over here with a descending passage way far away that started in the...
Yeah, just a like a hole in the ground outside of the structure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you've got an entrance on the
So
side
this
of the
way,
mastaba.
this way, the descending passage has an entrance in the side,
in the mastaba.
in the mastaba itself,
And
before
then it goes
it
down into
plunges
the bedrock.
bedrock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then you have this next addition. Maybe they added one on top, or maybe they widened it further and then eventually added a top piece. But anyway, it just keeps accumulating over time. And finally, somebody comes along and fills. So you have this mastaba structure, possibly here. We don't know. This gray part is what we see today. So we know that they at least did this. And these are finished casing stones here. Okay.
Can I ask a tangential question?
Yeah, what's up?
Why would the people who were adding on to it not just have the entryway turn and be flat? Like, why does it need to keep going up at that angle?
I don't know.
I mean, I know you don't have the answer to this question, but it seems weird to me. Like, if you keep adding on, what is this? Is this entry angle important?
That is a great
Why would you
question,
not
actually.
just
I
have
love
it
that
like
question.
go along the ground?
I love that question. I don't know. And we should look at all of the angles of the descending passageways because why are they all angled? Maybe
Yeah.
it's to make it really difficult to get
Something
stuff
out of it, yeah.
I don't know.
But if that's the only chamber in that whole thing,
Holy crap, bro. Are you
why would
serious?
they keep adding on to it? So you're just stacking blocks, but
You're
there's
changing the subject, but let
okay.
me
I'm
get-
sorry.
I love that. I love that, but I just want to get through this real quick. So,
Okay, yeah.
But
My bad.
All I'm saying is they filled in all this with core masonry.
Yes.
The outside. This is a massive project, and it could have taken 20 years
Oh yeah.
to go from this step structure and fill in all this shit with core masonry, and then bring in the Tura limestone and cut and make this angle and polish and do all the stuff, and then make your entryway, everything. That's a 20-year job. Maybe, perhaps.
Yeah.
So yeah, finished casing stones. Definitely not the guy who did the finished pyramid. This is at Giza. These are the satellite pyramids, and you can see here what we're calling the superstructure. This wall, right? There's like this straight wall. Like this pyramid was not initially this. See, these are the casing stones on the outside there.
Yeah.
That show you that was the angle right there of the pyramid, but there's this wall and this whole structure on the inside. This one's obviously the same because it's wearing in the same way. This is near the pyramid of Menkaure. And so here we go. Superstructure. This is a wall.
Yep.
They weren't just laying course after course of core masonry making a pyramid shape. They were actually building some kind of
mastaba-like structure.
A mastaba-like structure.
Yeah, with steep
This
walls.
doesn't look like a 75-degree angle, though. This is like more straight.
Yeah.
I mean, the step pyramid is a mastaba. It has the 75-degree angle. Anyways, another one here. This is the third satellite pyramid of Menkaure. The only one that they say is a true pyramid is this first one.
The first one. Yep.
but I would be willing to bet. Look at this line
Yep,
here.
it's got some. I think so.
It
yeah.
just, I think this might have been a better, this one was built better,
Yeah.
built back better. And it has the granite casing stones and stuff.
Yeah.
So anyway, this is Midkare.
And there it is. The wall.
And the guy that dug in there, what did he find? He found a flat wall
Yeah.
in there. So there is a superstructure in this pyramid, which is also considered to be a true pyramid. So who built this? Was it the same? They built this. I mean, I just don't understand how you can say this is a true pyramid, this is not a true pyramid. I know Petrie's argument for why. His whole thing was the original design had to include the total overall size.
Yeah.
Or at least a good portion of it. And we can look at that. We can look at a diagram of that. But this is Kintkawas. Here's a superstructure sitting on top of a piece of bedrock that's cut at this very steep angle. They were casing it. It was supposedly a fully built pyramid. This is Unas.
Yeah.
Look at these beautiful casing stones. Not these. These are crap. This is not even real. But these are. And then back here is this superstructure, this flat wall that they're casing up against, and they're filling it with this core masonry.
Yeah.
Not this. This is modern. So anyway, let me see. I'm gonna have to go find this other part. But that was my point. Is that Joe hit the nail on the head. What if they just cased it? About the Great Pyramid.
Yeah.
Now, Petrie's argument about the Great Pyramid not being an accretion style was that he showed the descending passageway coming up, and he showed that where it
leaves the
bedrock, the pyramid had to at least already have been this
that
massive
big. Yeah.
structure. But if you were to look at a diagram of that, which I'll pull up here, you could, let's see, how do I see my, we'll pull it up. I don't know if I have one where Petrie showed the how big the pyramid had to be. He had a diagram where it was shaded to show the pyramid had to at least be this big.
Yeah.
But with this diagram, we can at least
We can see it. Yeah.
And this slide is actually kind of showing something else, but whatever. I'll show it here. And it's gone. I put it on the wrong desktop. Let's see. Right here.
There you go.
Give me a minute, folks. Okay, so his point was that the pyramid at least had to be, the descending passageway had to at least have gone past the ascending passageway, right? You wouldn't have an entrance to a pyramid down here and then way up here have this ascending passageway in a slope.
Yes.
Way up, right?
Yep.
You got that slope. There's no ascending passageway on the slope. So the descending passageway had to at least come to here. So the pyramid total overall dimensions had to at least be this big. Right? This could have been the minimum exterior wall size, which is still enormous. That was Petrie's point. Like, this was not a mastaba that started from a little thing and got bigger and bigger and bigger.
The only way that
I'm sorry, he could be right about that.
Yeah.
But that a mastaba was not the only type of structure that was being built.
Yeah.
Before it was cased and turned into a giant triangle.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
The one way that it could be, I mean, it's still not going to be much smaller when you're looking at that diagram, but if it just ended above so that there was no ascending passageway in the first iteration, then you could basically have the descending passageway coming just up out of the bedrock and then out of the wall of the first stage of a mastaba. And then there would be no, because building in the second part would add all those upper chambers, right? But still, I agree with you.
We can get into that. I mean, that would be interesting because once they build the second phase, then they've got this ascending passageway to like what?
Yeah.
You know?
What the
a
second phase
passageway
is
to-
the rest of it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, the only way it would work is if there's only
So,
2 phases.
I think
Or
at least what we can say is we can say
Oh yes, we can
that
say.
if I haven't looked at the source material that Zahi is talking about with this writing and all this stuff and what Jason told me about as well. I mean, he read about it, but I haven't seen that. But I would say that the most that evidence can claim is that they cased it.
Yeah.
The lack of writing or mentioning of a giant structure on the Giza Plateau prior to that time is not evidence that it didn't exist.
Yeah.
That's all
right.
I'm saying.
That's right.
So that's my response video. Whatever.
Excellent response video. Well, in that vein, I do have this email.
Let's hear it.
Yeah, from Tony, he was the Bronze Age Atlantis guy on the
Yes.
show. Yeah, he also is an admin in the Discord.
Oh yeah.
Stuck around for all these years. He's still emailing us on occasion.
What a guy.
Yeah. So he says it's called Zep Tepi is actually Tep Zepi. He says, we were doing some digging into Zep Tepi in the Discord, so I figured I would see what source Hancock cited for it in Fingerprints of the
I
Gods.
know why they were doing this research. Is this recent?
Yeah. He just emailed me this like last week.
Zahi was like, I have never heard of this.
Ah. Okay.
So the Discord people, I thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Keep going. They're
So-
looking into it to figure out where it really came from.
So he has got page 366 of Fingerprints of the Gods. Hancock is discussing Giza and so on and so forth. And he has this sentence. All the most ancient records and traditions of Egypt spoke of such events and associated them with the epoch during which the gods had ruled on earth, the fabled first time, which was called Zep Tepi. And then there is a citation number there, 63. So Tony says, with the citation, it comes from a book called Myth and Symbol in Ancient Egypt. So he says, what does the book have to say? So now we have a page from page 263 from Myth and Symbol in Ancient Egypt, and he's got it circled. So it says at the end here, the creation of myths was founded on certain principles. These are strange and as yet only partially understood. The most important elements seem to have been as follows. A, the basic principles of life, nature, and society were determined by the gods long ago, before the establishment of the kingship. This epoch, Tep Zepi, the first time, stretched from the first stirring of the high god in the primeval waters to the settling of Horus upon the throne and the redemption of Osiris. All proper myths relate events or manifestations of this epoch.
So this was a this was a typo.
A typo.
That then everyone has been saying. And
Zep
then,
Tepi.
and then Joe Rogan says it to Zahi, and he's like, I have never heard of this.
It's Tep Zepi. He should have recognized it, though, if he knew what this was, right?
He said he had never heard of it, and it was just lies. Like, just straight up is like, it's not real.
Okay.
And then Joe was like, well, it's myth. And he was like, no, it doesn't exist.
The myth doesn't exist.
I mean, this is what I'm saying. Like, there was definitely a language barrier issue.
Sure.
So it was like when Joe would try to clarify, I'm like, I'm not sure if that was actually a complete clarification because Zahi didn't seem to get it. But at some point, I think he got the point across that, like, well, it's myth. And he's like, where is it written? And then Joe was like, I don't know. And then Jamie was like, I've been looking for it, and it's from some book. I don't know, one book.
Yeah, myth and
found.
symbol in ancient Egypt. So, well, the page is actually interesting. Myths told as long connected narratives are a comparatively late phenomenon. In the earlier ages of Egyptian history, myths can inform rituals or even dramatic and mime performances in choric songs, but there are no long sagas. These make an appearance in rather primitive form in the texts of the 9th dynasty, while the myth as entertainment first appears in the Great Quarrel, quote unquote. Most early Egyptian myths are quite short episodes and can be told in 1 or 2 sentences. They are not long involved relations like those which have been recovered from the contemporary Sumerians of Mesopotamia. For the Egyptians, mythology was not a collection of texts, but a language. This is fundamental. It explains why the doings of the gods could be altered, be expanded, and even reappear with other protagonists without apparent inconsistency. But myths do not have to be consistent. They belong to a way of thinking in which consistency in the logical sense is irrelevant. The myth was a way, and before the emergence of lay philosophy with the Greeks, the only way to express ideas about the cosmos or the needs of the human soul. This is why Egyptian mythology is so simple, so absurd, and sometimes so profound. It is dream, metaphysics, and poetry all at once.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Tep
Zeppi. So Tony, finishing his email, he says, there you have it. The actual phrase from the source Hancock cites is Tep Zeppi, not Zep Tepi. So from now on, I expect you guys to use only the correct phrase, Tep Zeppi.
You got it, bro.
When referring to the period that literally everyone else on the fringe calls Zep Tepi. This should help clear things up. Cheers, Tony.
I love it, dude. Thank you.
Yeah. We'll do it.
That's awesome.
Tep Zeppi.
All right, well, let's take a break, and then we'll come back and go into the stuff you brought for the trip.
Sure.
Look at
Yeah, we got
videos
some
and stuff.
got some trip pics and footage.
Okay, welcome back, folks. Again.
Classic Snake Bros mistake. 0 mistakes of not hitting the record button.
But I hit the record button. I just didn't turn the mics on, and we
Right.
were just yapping away.
Yeah,
All right.
it's okay.
I would like
I was actually wondering. Well, that's inside baseball. We can talk about that later. But
I was distracted because this shit wasn't working, and then it wasn't working because the mics weren't working.
yeah, I was going off on a beautiful Cartwright spiel, and I'm getting nothing from Kyle because
Yeah.
he's like messing with macros and reprogramming shit, and I'm like, bro, are we going to talk about this or what?
First, before we get into that, I want to invite you all to the Evening at the Explorers Club event, which we are doing. Russ and I are going to be speaking at with Adam Young, Karoly Poka, and Ben from UnchartedX. And it's an event put on for the Artifact Foundation. Prior to the event, we're going to the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston to scan some ancient Egyptian artifacts. And that's going to be really cool. Another little research trip. And then we're cruising up to Adam's territory up there in New York. And we're doing this event. It's on Saturday, June 28th. And you can find it at eventbrite.com, Evening at the Explorers Club. Just
I'll
look
put
it up.
links in the show notes.
Yeah. Join us there. There's also an option to go to the museum, the Met in New York. That's right nearby. Prior to this event on the same day, we'll go like in the afternoon, like right at around noon. So yeah, check out the event on Eventbrite.
Yeah, so you can visit the museum with us. We'll look
do
at
a little tour. We'll
do
go
a
through.
tour. We'll look at the ancient Egyptian artifacts. Ben will be there. We'll discuss the vases and everything, and then we'll go over to the Explorers Club and do the presentations and hang out. It'll be great.
Yeah. So please join us.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Cart Ruts.
Cart ruts and
Officially.
other things in Turkey. Yeah. So, I've been interested in cart ruts for years. The most famous ones are on Malta. There's a lot of them on Malta. The Clapham Junction is like one of the most famous, and there's so many ruts that it looks like a train switching station. That's why they called it that. It's named after Clapham Junction in the UK. But a lot of the ruts on Malta are very narrow gauge. Now, some of them aren't. Some of them have what look like fat, whatever the wheels were, they were wide. But a lot of the ruts in Malta are narrow gauge wheels like what you would expect from a wagon or a cart. We visited some in Austin here nearby us. Those also are narrow, maybe 3 or 4 inches in width, and then pretty deep in the bottoms of riverbeds. And the rivers are now they're seasonal. I think that like probably 100 years ago or more, they were not. I think they had water all the time. But it's interesting because the ruts that we visited in Austin, they just go along the riverbed, curving back and forth, following the river. And all of the cart ruts in the U.S., and there are quite a few, are associated with pioneers moving west in the colonial times, because no one had carts before that. Not accepted that anyone had wheeled carts before that in the U.S. So everything must be colonial. The ones in Malta are assumed to have been made by single axle carts traveling in the same path and digging the ruts into the stone over a long period of time. Same with the ones in the U.S. It's colonial wagons, and they're all moving along the same exact path, and they dig these ruts. I can't really buy that story. There's just something that doesn't quite match with that. If you're in the bottom of a riverbed, why are you going to be exactly in the same place as the guy before you?
Unless it's like these huge, long, what do you call them? Wagon trains.
Like a wagon train.
And they're all just one right after the other. That kind of makes sense. The thing that doesn't make sense to me is that you got horses pulling these wagons.
Yeah.
And so like the middle should be all pounded out.
Yep.
From all the horse hoofs.
Yeah, right.
And we don't see that.
And most wagons, colonial wagons, were, I don't know what it's called, but dual yokes. 2 horses, 4 sometimes. They are walking in the same place that the ruts would be. It's not a single horse in the middle. A lot of times you had multiple horses, maybe you had 4 of them.
Yeah, so they'd be beating up the edges, and they'd be tripping in the ruts, and it would be horrible. So
yeah,
you'd have to have a horse in the center,
in the middle,
and then he'd be with these
trapped.
crisscrossing ruts everywhere.
Yeah,
he'd be like stepping in the ruts and breaking a leg, and just there'd be dead horse carcasses everywhere from people having to shoot their horse with a broken leg.
Yeah. That's right.
It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense. And even with a big, long wagon train, like you're saying, like let's say the first guys came through, those ones in Austin, they're coming through and they're riding along that riverbed. They're not going to be in exactly the same spot. But those ruts are deep and they're wagon wheel width. It's like, it looks like one cart made the rut. And then the way that they split off from each other, how does that happen if you have one train going through, they're all following each other? Well, why does another set go this way? Come on. There has to be an explanation that makes sense, right? Something happened. Something made these ruts. And so we visited these ones in Turkey. I'm fascinated by the ones in Turkey because I think they're far less visited. They're far less, there's good photographs of them online, but not very many people go to see them. They kind of stand out because of the amount of them, the fact that most of them are very wide. They have a wide wheel and a very flat bottom, sharp sides. A lot of the ones in Malta are so heavily eroded, it's difficult to take good measurements. So visiting these ones in Turkey in the Phrygian Valley was like one of my goals with going to Turkey, and we were able to make it happen. And it was cool. Like when we were there, I spent 2 days cruising around on Google. I'm like, I've got to get a pin for one spot where we can go, because we have to, you got to take the bus out there with all these people, and you can't just say, we're going to go hiking out here and hopefully find some ruts, because they're out here somewhere, right? But we were able to sort of pinpoint the area, and then Ramazan, our contact in Turkey, Ramazan's amazing. He got a local guy. And he told me, he's like, okay, I have a local guy from the area, and he knows where the ruts are. So that guy was able to tell Ramazan where to take the bus, and we drove the bus out and parked it basically in a field, and we all got out and went walking up. And this dude shows up to help us out, and he's wearing a Phrygian cap. he had a red Phrygian cap on that, flops over in the front. And we're like, holy crap, this is great. And sure enough, we went on a hike out there, and you just come up over, and there's up over a little rise, and there's this volcanic tuff sticking up out of the sandy ground around us, and there's just tons of deep ruts going through it. So I'm going to pull up some pictures here. Let me do this real quick.
So
I can talk my way through it like Randall. Let me get my pictures up here and click on share screen. There we go. Are you guys seeing this?
Oh, yes. Yep. We're seeing it.
Okay. So this was the first set we visited. Came up over the hill. Now look, you can see how sharp some of the edges are. This one, you can see my mouse. This one here, this is like, look at the uneven ground here. I wonder if I can get it to zoom in. Yeah. Look at the uneven ground, but the rut cuts through it is flat. So this is something Kyle noticed almost immediately, that the ruts will go through a very uneven area where the stone around them is going up and down, but the ruts themselves actually have a pretty flat base, or if the ruts are going up and down as well, it's much slower. It's like a controlled rise and
yeah, they're not all perfectly flat and straight, but they do rise and fall. But the
difference between
the surface of the ground is so much more dynamic than the ruts.
Exactly.
And you wouldn't see that if it was just made by carts, like wheels just passing over the same area over and over again. In fact, I think you might see the opposite. You would see, like, depending on the speed, I guess.
Yeah.
You would either see a regular wear that matched the ground elevation, or you might see a little bit of an increase in the dynamics, because when you're going down, when you reach the bottom, you hit
the bottom, yeah.
You've got extra inertia going down, so it would dig deeper at the bottom of curves, and then at the top or the crest, it would be a little bit less, depending on the speed, of course, of travel.
It also argues against these being made in soft material for the same reasons, right?
Yeah.
Unless you have to make the assumption that this material was probably flat because it started out soft. This is volcanic tuff. It's been hardened by exposure over a long period of time. It's crystalline now. I don't know what the hardness level is. All volcanic tuff is different, but this stuff isn't exceedingly hard, right? I'd say it's like less than limestone or limestone-ish.
Yeah,
hardness.
I would say it's quite a bit less than limestone. Just from climbing that one hill and just kind of seeing the way the rock would like break away, and it's I think it's pretty soft.
It's also very porous, which I'll show in some of the photos. And you can see Yusuf here, holding forth. He seemed to think that a lot of them were actually hand carved, which was interesting. And this particular picture is an argument for that, because it's definitely, this one shows you that they weren't making it by carts just digging them in the ground. At least not this set. This is the other thing. I think it must be multiple things. I've started to think this. There's no single answer that explains this site. This one might have been carved. Here's a picture of the same. Look, they don't even come to the same. They're different lengths. This can't be made by a cart.
Yeah.
So I think this set.
Unless his axle was just way off alignment.
But how does it just start right there or end? At this other end, if you look,
there's no way. I mean,
it also is ending right here or going up.
Yeah.
Before it merges into this deeper rut set right here. So I don't know. This almost looks like somebody came out here and was like, "Wow, I can make ruts too," and they started carving some. They're not the same width as most of the other ruts. This This width across here is totally different. They're actually cut into an older rut set. What's going right down the middle between these two is a bigger, larger rut set that matches a rut off to the right here. It's just hard to see because of the shadows, but this is what most of them look like. They have a very similar width in terms of wheel to wheel, and then the width of the wheels themselves are very similar. And then, as you can see, this is going forward. There's a bump in the rock right here in the front, but the rut doesn't change. It cuts through it, as you can see, shown by the shadow right here. The rut cuts through this extrusion of the rock and stays flat, and then it moves forward, and then there's another place up here where the rock is extruding and the rut stays at the same level, which means it's a deeper rut back there. Very interesting. It doesn't make sense for them being cut specifically by cartwheels. It also doesn't make sense for them being cut in soft material unless all of this erosion unless erosion that has made the rock have this dynamic pattern has happened after the ruts were made.
No way, because the water would choose the ruts.
That's right.
So the erosion, the deeper erosion would be in the ruts.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't look, I mean, if it had been that long, they wouldn't be flat.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't, it would just be a gorge or
Yeah.
whatever. But I think this is this is another argument. I mean, it's basically the same argument that they were prepared. Like, how can you stay flat when the ground is undulating going up and down?
Yeah. And then look at this. Look how this is the outer cut edge in this particular rut is sharp, and then the inner one is rounded.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, I'm sure you're going to show some pictures of the deeper ones, but there's more arguments that they were prepared. In my opinion, that they were cut. I'm saying prepared because I think they're cut by something. But prepared is like an intentional preparation for something, as opposed to just being cut by passing by.
Yeah. There's lots of lichen on the stone too. I'd like to know, I'd liken to know what, if this can tell us anything about time in terms of exposure. This is the other thing. Like, look at how this particular, so this is several ruts either separating or merging together, however you want to look at it. On the right there, you can see two different depths. So how does that happen? If it's prepared, why is that happening?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. It doesn't explain it.
That's what I'm saying.
I mean, you can come up with scenarios like, I mean, maybe they had to repair it because it was getting offset. I mean, if there was something driving past this, surely the continuous driving past with something is going to cause wear.
Sure.
In this soft material. And that seems to be the case in some of the more deeper ones. There's something scraping the sides.
Yeah.
And that doesn't look prepared.
Right.
So then I think this does have to do with something passing by.
Yeah.
That seems pretty clear.
Well, yeah, I just don't know. This is another thing. So in an argument against this being made in soft material before this stuff was hardened, here's a fracture, that is moving through all the material. It's a crack, a natural crack, and it kind of goes down into the rut, but it also it doesn't continue over here, so I don't know. But you can see the split down the side of this. And we saw this in several other places too, that what looked like natural fractures in the rock would either end at the ruts or pass through it. Sometimes it depended on what you were looking at. This one's really rough, but you can see it goes through some deep material there. And the ruts are of two different sizes. I think that's why I took this picture. The one on the right is wide, and the one on the left is very narrow. It doesn't make any sense.
He was rolling on a donut.
Yeah, he had a spare wheel.
He had his donut going,
dude. His donut on. Another thing we were told, is that this is for irrigation, but that didn't make any sense either.
No.
So yeah, you can see that.
Why do you need pairs of channels for
Right.
irrigation? You only need one.
So this picture shows you the nature of the rock. See how porous it is. And I'm not sure I got good photos of this, but you were pointing out that there were places where we could see in the sidewall of the rut, you could see harder material, like a piece of basalt caught in the tuff, and it had been cut through.
Yeah.
Which
instead of plucked out of there, it was
plucked. Yeah. Which if these were being made when the material was soft, it should have just shoved that piece of basalt down into the rut or whatever. Instead you could see that they were sheared, right, cut through. So that, I'm pretty sure at this point, like almost 100% sure that these were not made when this stuff was soft, which is good because this stuff was supposed to be soft like 10 or 11 million years ago. A single rut of one narrow rut. So it's not a cart. Now, again, this one argues for them being carved.
it argues for unicycles.
A unicycle. Yeah.
They all took the same unicycle path, dude. Is that even possible?
It's also pretty steep right here. You can't really see it because of the photo, with the way of the photo. But I'm standing at the bottom of a where people's feet are. It actually goes down to where I'm standing. So this rut is either going down or going up a fairly steep bit of hill. It's just really weird, and it ends up there. It doesn't go anywhere. It just stops. Yeah, look at that.
That's
Unicart.
I'm going with the unicycle thing. This is what they all fell down when they got up there. That's fine.
They tried to ride, like, I got to get out of these ruts. And they try to ride up the hill and they fall down. Every single one. Hundreds and hundreds of unicycles.
Exact same path. And they fell down in the same spot. Yeah, that's what happened there. Oh my gosh.
So yeah, again, when you look at this one, and I've spent a lot of time looking at these photos, so you can see fractures in the rock passing through multiple sets of ruts. You can see multiple sets of ruts that either merging together or separating from each other. They're all going in the same general direction, but it's very haphazard. Like, it isn't planned out. It looks like somebody was driving through mud because of the way that they are all merging and separating and merging, and there's multiple ruts laid on top of older ruts that are less well defined.
But here's the other thing. If you were gonna, this is one of the things I kept thinking about while we were there. If, let's just go with the wagons idea. If you're gonna be on a wagon train and you're going along and you're digging this rut, then sometime later, another wagon train comes by and goes in a different direction. They're driving over and merging seamlessly into your ruts and then back out of your ruts without having like a dog leg in their passage.
Yeah.
Which is what this shows. You've got one path that's really deeply cut, and then you got these other ones that are going past it. That obviously the deeply cut ones were done after the shallower ones.
Yes.
And it just is a perfectly straight line. Like, no problem. But you would be,
yes,
and
bumping.
your wheels would be getting stuck in the other ones if you were coming in at it at this
very slight angle. Yeah, your wheels would want to jump into that rut and stay there.
There was no signs at all that any rut maker was aware of the other ruts.
Yeah.
Like, it just,
that's why
it was not affected by the fact that there were other ruts.
Right. So in this one picture, you have an argument against every possible hypothesis.
Except that they were prepared.
Well,
but that doesn't make any sense.
The argument against that is, look how many there are.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
why do you need that many ruts if you're preparing them, if you're carving them by hand?
That's the question. Why? I don't know the answer to that, but at least it doesn't eliminate it as a possibility.
Yeah.
Whereas,
no, I said arguments against, not elimination.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah.
But that a cart, I would say.
Yeah, look at what Kyle's talking about here. This is a good one. We got a deep set of ruts here, but multiple sets to the right of them are basically going into that set. So it looks like the deep set was cut later, but that means that whoever was driving that cart had to bump their way across these older ruts.
But it didn't seem to shift their path at all.
Right.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like, it seems like you would. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense.
Also, some of them had this. I couldn't tell. I think these are scratch marks. You see these?
Mm-hmm.
And then right here on the side.
Yeah.
But this implies that they were bottoming out in their rut. Right? Somebody drove along here and made this long scratch.
Well, those could be like 10-speed street bikes. Bicycles.
Okay, yeah, you're right. They've got street bike wheels
little
on them.
tiny narrow
little
tires.
very narrow ones. Yeah.
Yeah.
But this is definitely
And they're all riding in the same line.
this is definitely a scrape mark on the side here. Right
Yeah.
here. Yeah. I do think those middle ones are scratches.
Look at this. Look at the way they merge and
Yeah.
diverge.
Yeah.
And it just seamless. Like there's
Yep.
no dog leg or jogging of the path.
Yeah.
It's just a straight line.
And there's three different things happening here. There's basically two sets of main ruts that are running alongside each other, but someone on rut set to the left up at the top decided he wanted to be in rut set to the right down at the bottom. Right? Because that original rut continues to go down, but this guy's like, I'm going to go across.
Yeah, how do you get out? Like,
How do you get out of the
you're in
rut?
a wagon
Yeah.
and you're in the ruts. Like, how do you just turn out of them in this, like,
I don't know.
look at this beautiful curve.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just going to turn out of this rut.
Yeah.
and the bottom, the wheelbase, like at the base there of the rut, it just stays flat.
Yeah. And he cuts his way through the center bump
Yeah.
of this older set of ruts. I don't know if they're older or whatever, but this other set of ruts right here, he just cuts his way through it. It's just crazy. The whole side, the whole time I'm walking around, I'm like, I don't understand anything. I don't know. I don't know. Look how deep this is. I got my AirPods case in there for scale.
And the side is so flat.
Yeah.
Like, it's so nicely flat.
Yes. But I have noticed that the inside walls, the walls of the ruts that face the interior of the vehicle are more sloped
Yeah.
than the outside. The outside has a much sharper edge, and there's actually a corner there, whereas this one, the inside one, has a more gentle slope
Very interesting.
in a lot of cases. And again, you can see how porous the material is there. And how flat the bottom is of the rut. Here's another one with scrape marks. And it's also an example of, why are you driving next to this big mound of rock when there's flat? It's flat right here. Why wouldn't you just drive over here? But instead, you're gonna come along and you have to cut your way through this hill.
And whatever was doing the cutting has some portion of it that's sticking out, and it's scraping
alongside. Yeah.
Because once the elevation of that goes down far enough, like there's no more scraping. Like
Yeah.
it's not. It's relative to the depth of the rut that there's
Yeah.
something sticking out way further than if it was a wheel.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. When we were there, remember we were talking about, well, maybe the wheels are going through and they have their axles
Big
are sticking
hubs
out,
sticking out.
big hubs sticking out, and so they're scraping along. But that each passage would cut so little material that it shouldn't leave defined lines like this.
Yeah, because
This implies
that was
that
the other
three
thing.
passes cut,
That was the other thing, is that as the bottom of the rut gets lower and lower and lower gradually, the thing that's scraping the side would do the same.
Yeah,
And so you would just have one
smooth. Instead, we have
cut. And
we
so you
have
got
defined lines
with
Yes.
no defined lines on the wheel rut,
Right.
which doesn't make any
It
sense.
doesn't make any
Not
sense.
wheels, not hubs. Moving on.
And why are they driving right next to this big mound of rock?
Or it was like different cart bed heights. Like
Yeah.
2 different heights of cart.
Yeah.
So it's the same wheel.
Or it was a couple of guys who had loads on their carts that were sticking off.
I'm not dead.
Yeah. This one's been is more famous. It's had multiple pictures of it. You can see the scraping along the
This is
side.
crazy.
And that's deep. And again, the question is why did they
Again, you see the bottom is flat.
Yes.
And the hill is just
Yeah. And it looks like there's a different rut in the middle.
Yeah.
I just don't understand.
But here's more evidence to me that there's some type of preparation, because the middle part, how is that getting cut away?
Yeah.
Like if your wheels are going down, the middle part is also going down. So what, you're just dragging once the carts cut the wheel ruts until the carts are scraping now you're just dragging a cart.
Yeah.
And the wheels aren't really doing anything. No. That's not what
you have a
happened
metal
either.
giant, like, the front, like what you have on the front of a train engine. It's just
I wish I could just take the video that's in my mind right now and make it real. Because
that's what AI is
it's
for.
just some guy like watching this dude with his
drag
horses.
his car. Yeah, the horse is just
whole cart is just being dragged. It's like,
yeah,
what's the point of this?
and that's it. Even without talking about the center, which is a great point, they're doing that with the side.
Yeah, the sides just
Somebody's like, I can fit through there.
Nope.
Nope. And once you get so far in, you can't back out because the horse is in the front and he's stuck in there too. So guess what? You got to go through. But yeah, look at this section. Why did they choose to drive it through this spot, and how deep that has to be? Look at the gouges on the side.
Yeah.
And that second rut, the rut going across the middle one. What is that?
That's a fat tire unicycle.
Yeah. I think this is just astonishing to me. And that's what I'm saying. It reminded me of like you walking around and there's nothing that explains it all. There's no explanation. Okay. Nothing conventional. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you were able to easily cut, if you had the shamir mounted on your cart in front of your wheels, and it's just making the ruts as you go through. Because I definitely don't think that this was made in soft stuff. I think that
No.
we can eliminate that idea.
So weird.
Yeah. And the multiple sets again, like
And that there's so much other flat ground.
yeah.
Why
Why
you
are they
drive
going
over
through these
big,
areas?
tall spots?
And look at all these sets, there's just some places there were just multiple sets all across each other, and they're crossing back and forth. Look at this. I know this is going to be difficult. For those of you who are listening on the RSS feed, this is going to be a difficult part
just
for you.
picture in your mind
just-
big fat tire unicycles.
Some of them are unicycles.
It's 2 guys on unicycles riding next to each other in these big Flintstone unicycles.
I don't know. I don't know how to explain it. Let me stop share. I want to show some video. Real quick. And then we'll come back to some of these other pictures. Let's see.
I just don't see how you can get the level track with the undulating surface without some kind of preparation. It wasn't like, or some kind of other like that it was being guided in some way
Yeah.
along the path. it just doesn't make any sense. I don't know how you can do it without preparing that surface beforehand. It wouldn't be the result of a natural dragging or driving of some type of vehicle.
Yeah.
I just don't see how it could be. It wouldn't end up being flat.
Yep.
Unless the vehicle had multiple wheels and it spanned a long distance. So like you think about a track machine. When you go up a ridge, the track machine rides up on that ridge, and then eventually it breaks over.
Yeah.
So it's putting a lot more weight on that ridge
Yep.
than it does on flat ground. Flat ground, it doesn't put a whole lot of weight. So now if you're talking about a track machine, it will level out bumps and undulations. In other words, the wheels of the cart are on a rigid plane,
Yeah. Okay.
and so that they can't individually move up and down. They're all on this plane. So like the first couple of wheels drive up on a slope, and it picks up the entire weight of the front of this
Yeah.
longer train cart thing.
Yeah.
That would wear down higher surfaces, and once you get a flat surface, the pounds per square inch of each wheel is much, much lower.
Yeah.
The moment that the front of the track rises up on something, the PSI of that little portion of that track goes way up because it's actually holding the weight of almost the entire
Yes.
machine.
Yeah.
So that's all I got.
You're suggesting they were tracked vehicles? Is that
Well, what
I
I'm
missed
saying,
the first part. Sorry.
What I'm saying is I'm just using a track machine as an example of a way that you could flatten undulating surfaces. Like with a car, it doesn't work because the wheels can move independently up and down.
Yeah.
And you only have 2 sets. But if you had like 18 wheels, 18 axles, and they were on a rigid frame so that if you lifted up the front axle, all the other axles up to the back axle, in other words, that the back wheels and the front wheels would be the only thing touching the ground.
Yeah.
Then you've just increased the weight on those front tires or wheels a whole lot. They're holding up the entire frame.
Yeah.
So that as it passes that, it's wearing it down much quicker than when all the wheels are touching. The PSI for each wheel is so much lower so that it basically makes flat surfaces. That's what I'm saying.
Right. So over time, the tracked vehicle could cut its way through bumpy areas because once it goes up onto that, it's heavy there, and it's like cutting through.
All the weight is focused on that one spot.
Yes, and then eventually it would just it's basically normalizing the surface.
Normalizing it, yeah.
Okay.
Because it's a long rigid frame.
Yeah. Tracked vehicles. That is
curving tracked vehicles.
Yeah, they have to be.
They have to curve. Don't know any tracks that can curve.
Not that we make.
No. But I mean,
Caterpillar.
You could do it with wheels also. It would just
like a bunch of wheels.
The wheels all would need to be on a rigid frame. Now the frame could move like this, like those snakes out of wood.
Yeah. Yeah, the whole frame can do this.
Yeah, but it won't go up and down. So you pick the head of the snake up, and then the only thing that's touching is the tail and the head.
Yeah.
But it can move side to side freely. That's the answer. Snakes. Wooden snakes.
So a train of carts connected together with like maybe a single bar, right? So you have a whole bunch of carts, so the whole thing can snake like you're talking about. But that wouldn't normalize the surface. It has to keep itself.
It has to keep
rigid in the horizontal.
In the horizontal. Yeah.
Damn it. We got cart trains. Horizontally rigid cart trains.
Yeah.
so that if the lead cart goes up a bump, it picks up all the carts in the middle.
Yeah, and then when the lead cart comes off that bump, it keeps going up until it breaks over.
Breaks over the center of gravity, and
That's
then it
what
breaks
a track
over.
vehicle does, right?
Yes,
You go
that's
up,
exactly what a track vehicle does. Yeah.
You hit this little bump, and the whole thing goes up, and then when you get to the middle, it's like boom, it breaks over.
Yeah.
But if you keep driving over that bump, you'll eventually flatten it out.
Yeah, that's right. But when you turn, you make a giant mess. Yeah, and if you're stuck in in a big rut,
you can't turn.
You can't turn at all. Yeah, in a tracked vehicle. Okay, so I was going to show real quick this part that we saw. Oh, where's the video? It's not showing up. Okay.
It says you change your device. Anyways.
Yeah, why did it do
Not
that?
getting the share screen? I don't know.
I'll reopen the video. It's too bad. I had it in the spot that I wanted. Yeah, the laptop is slow. I need to get a better one, especially if I'm going to be doing this a lot. Okay, I'll pause that. Open it up. Share screen. There it is. Okay, so in this video, I'm just carrying the camera and walking along a bunch of different sets of ruts on the edge of the formation, because I was interested in where the ruts just sort of disappear to. So I'm right at the edge of the formation. You can see some brush there in front of me. But this part right over here, the ruts just kind of go off the edge of a hill and just disappear. They literally just vanish. Why don't they go down that slope of stone?
So in the same sense, that
if it's being made by carts, there should be ruts going down there.
But in the same with a rigid frame, like a train with a rigid frame, a valley, the wheels would never go down into it.
Yeah.
They would span it.
Yes.
Until they hit another high point, and then so maybe it has some flexibility on the vertical, like it goes up and down a little bit, obviously, because the tracks, we did notice that they weren't all perfectly flat.
Sure. I think another explanation is that this area has eroded away since the tracks were made.
Yeah, that's possible. Yeah.
See how there's that kind of cut? But yeah, this set of ruts just sort of vanishes right here. It's interesting. That one also goes down and just stops at the edge there.
I definitely think that you've got some. I mean, these are eroded.
Yeah,
like there is some erosion since the formation of these. That plays a big role. I mean, I don't think they were made in soft material.
Yeah.
I don't think they were made before any of the erosion took place. I think the vast majority of erosion of this area took place before the
ruts were made. Yeah,
and then these, but there is definitely some erosion on them. And it'd be interesting to see this place in the middle of a flood. Like, what is it like when it's just dumping rain down?
Yeah,
kind of cool to see what happens. But clearly, they're not so eroded that they're just soft depressions. I mean, you've got these clean, flat edges.
Yep, that's right.
So the erosion is not so great.
Okay, I'll stop the share on that.
Completely obscuring them. So I don't know. It's strange.
Yeah. So one problem we're having is Kyle can't really see what I'm trying to show with the video because it's not transferring to the main screen. But that's okay. I think you guys are going to be able to see it. But yeah. Kyle just can't see it. I have some of the drone footage is really good because it shows the perspective. So let me pull up one of the drone shots here. And we visited, there were two main areas of the ruts, but the reason I like this shot is because there was a different set of ruts across a valley that I flew the drone over to, and you can see, I would love to have been able to walk over there because they're very interesting, and they kind of are doing what you're talking about. There's these large undulations of the volcanic tuff, and the ruts cut through and disappear and cut through and disappear. Multiple sets of these undulations, and they're in almost, it looks like, very even sets. Now, obviously, I'm looking at it from the drone way up above. You need to kind of walk around to really see, but it looks like you have 3 sets of ruts, very evenly spaced, and they just cut through, and then they disappear in the low area, and they cut through the next undulation, and they disappear, and they're kind of staying. It's
wow, that's yeah.
I think it's 3 sets.
Suggests a huge vehicle.
Yeah. So let me share this, and I'll hopefully this footage will come across in the share screen. So I've got the drone way up high. I'm directly over the rut site that we're at, and you can see the field where the bus is parked. Right out here is our bus, and the little town here in the Phrygian Valley, and there's a set of ruts here. Okay, so I fly the drone over in that direction. I think I kind of look around, so this gives you a scan of the whole landscape. And you can also see that there's a lot of material that was laid down here in volcanic eruptions, and then this has been eroded away for a long time. So you can see these cliff edges out there. This is like a butte right here with a more volcanic tuff at the very top. But this is probably the total, the actual height of the material before it was all eroded down to these levels. Like 10 or 11 million years ago when this stuff was laid down, and it's been being eroded since. Here's the set of ruts we've been looking at in this one section of material. Why is it only here?
Yeah, that's really strange.
I have not been able to figure this out. They seem to just appear in this section, spread out, and make a whole bunch of ruts, and then vanish. It's really strange. So I'll just keep letting the drone video play. But you can see there's a couple of sets of ruts that sort of stand out. Those are the deepest ones. And then how they're all crossing each other. There's ones that are barely visible. I don't know if that means they're older or they were less well established as ruts. But this section right here, I think this is interesting. Let me back this up a tiny bit. So you can see this set right here is coming along, and then it seems to just fan out. It curves in this direction, but then there's this set that comes out of it, and this one that comes out of it, and another set that comes out of it. And then they all merge back together over here. What is going on? Why is it happening this way?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
It's so weird.
I love the fact that we can't answer any of these questions.
They were trying to make a peanut. They were trying to make it look like a peanut.
Kyle thinks it looks like a peanut. Okay, so the drone is turning around. We'll come back at this set of ruts from the other side. And again, you can see they just sort of show up. I'll pause it real quick here. They kind of show up. It looks like they all sort of head in the direction of that is now this is the vehicle path. Some cars came driving past us over here on this road. So it looks like the ruts come out of this path and spread out over this area of tuff for some reason and then disappear. I think we might just be missing a lot of the evidence. It's either under sand or it's been eroded away since these were made. Also, look on the side here. There's a set of ruts that goes through this material, but just almost disappears afterwards. I think this might have been the layer that the ruts were made in. And it's just, that layer is just gone. in these other areas, so the ruts are also gone. All right, so the drone, I fly the drone overhead. Just look at these beautiful cart ruts, people. If any of you have, write us emails. Listen, I should say this also. I read every email that gets sent to brothersoftheserpent@gmail.com. I read them all. I can't read them all on the show. I can't respond to them, but I do read some of them on the show. And any theory you got on the cart ruts,
Give us your theory.
give us your best theories, because I have no idea what's going on here.
We'll make a game out of it.
Yeah.
We will do our best to destroy your
Yeah,
theories.
give us your
Just
theories,
send-
and we will tell you why it's wrong. It's our favorite thing to do. We do it to ourselves
We'll
all the
dig through
time.
the photos and videos to see, and we'll find out why it's wrong. Great fun.
Is this the video where I actually fly it over in that direction? Maybe it's not. Let me skip ahead a bit here and see. Skip a bit, brother. It's not. Okay. Let me.
Uh-oh. Your laptop's not recording now.
All right. So once again, the set of ruts we were just looking at is directly below the drone. I'm flying it along the modern vehicle path towards this, I guess it's a dam or some kind of flood stop, a flood wall in the valley, because there's a set of ruts on the other side of this valley that appear to be going down into the valley from the upper parts of the volcanic tuff. And it is a very beautiful and strange area. All of the Phrygian Valley and Cappadocia is like this, just weird and interesting.
Yeah, those are weird. Look at that. They just appear.
Okay, so it's
on the
two
side of
sets.
the hill.
Yeah, so right here. So it's not 3 sets, 2 sets. You see how they just appear and they kind of go along, they just disappear. They appear in the
on the ridges.
in the ridges, in the high parts. Yeah. Let's move it forward a bit.
What if they were?
Yeah, look at this.
I just thought of something that was a really bad theory.
Kyle's, all right, let's hear it. Let's hear your worst
No,
theories.
it's horrible. Oh, that they were dragging logs. A log is a rigid frame, but of course it can't make curves.
Yeah, can't make curves.
That's why I originally thought of logs, just because you got this rigid frame that it's gonna dig a trough, but it wouldn't go into the valleys and it would cut more on the ridges. But nope, it has to be a snaky log, only in one axis.
Yeah. Yeah, isn't this strange that the ruts sort of disappear in the troughs, and only how is that possible? That it's cutting through the high parts
I'm telling
and
you how
not
it's
cutting.
possible.
You telling me it's tracked vehicles?
No, I'm telling you it was a rigid frame that was long. It was long enough to be suspended by that first ridge all the
But
way
what-
to the
okay.
next ridge.
What kind of ancient vehicle is that?
I'm not saying anything about ancient.
Okay.
I'm just saying what would do that. I don't know what else would do that.
Yeah. And these tracks just vanish. There's more volcanic tuff over here. There's one set right there. Let me move the video and pause it. There's just a couple of random sets that are going through the material right here. And then there's another one right here. And this one sort of seems to just, again, go off the edge here and disappear. But it may actually continue. It's hard to tell because this is from the drone. But there's definitely a set right here. And I think there's one down here because there's a set of ruts right there. So they seem to be going through these through the gully. That's a deep gully right there. Or not a canyon, but yeah, you can see the ruts in this. Comes right up out of the middle of the gully and up and over the top of this bulge in the stone. It's wild.
Yeah.
I'll move the drone back over. I think I fly it back over to where we are. I was sort of trying to use it to look for other sets of ruts. But yeah, you can see all the people I'll pause it here. You can see all the people way out here. This is where we are, way up here. But there's ruts going through all this material and crossing, in some cases, crossing these deep gorges. Here's a few right here. They kind of come out of this area with the, with the foliage. And I think they merge together and then cross what is now the modern track and then join these over here somewhere. But just look at that. I don't know.
No idea.
I have no idea and no theories. I can't explain
really
it.
strange.
Let me end the share, and then we'll show a few more pictures, and then we can wrap this up.
Yep. I gotta get up super early in the morning.
Okay.
I gotta go out to Hole in the Wall.
Ah.
Make some cart ruts.
Yeah. You're gonna be working on the machine out there?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me pull up.
Is this thing even working anymore?
There was a different site we went to, a different spot, and it had this, and I think this looks completely different. So I'll start with a picture of ruts from the area where we were. I'll share this real quick. Here we go. So many clicks to get to the share part.
I know, it's annoying.
It takes a lot of clicks. Okay. So here's ruts in the area where we were just looking at. This is a different section. But then this is a totally different area. Look at this.
This is insane.
And this look at how professional this photograph is. This is
No way.
very professional photograph.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Totally professional. This is a much better one. So notice the difference here, how rough the material is, how many scrapes there are along the side, like multiple vehicles were brought through this with different widths or different loads on them, and it's scraped. But then also the actual ruts themselves, there seems to be a narrow gauge one here. I'm not sure. This isn't as wide. So it almost,
I think these are later. Like this
is later, and I think this might have originally been a rut set like what we were looking at out there.
Look
but
at
then
that flat wall on the side.
Yes,
up
but
there.
then people drove their actual wagons through this because it's a great pass from this higher area down to a lower area.
And you have these bumps.
Yeah.
All along the track there.
What's also interesting is up here where you see this guy standing, there's another set of ruts going along the top of this set. Yeah, see right here, this is not a great picture, but this is where that rut set goes into this canyon, and there's another set that goes right here. Yeah, right there you go. So one set goes down through the stone like this, and the other set goes up above. We all had many jokes about the high road and the low road. Who's going to take the high road?
I think
I'll take the low road.
Set over here.
Yeah, there's another set over there. Yeah.
I mean, it's covered in sand.
But these look like the stuff we were looking out in the other parts of the valley. This looks like it's been that actual wagons have driven through this multiple times and changed it.
Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah.
That was the wildest one right there. I couldn't believe that.
Yeah. Okay. In the share there. Yeah, I hope you guys
Crazy stuff.
enjoyed that. I'm sorry we don't have any answers. We never do on Brothers of the Serpent podcast.
That's a tough one though, man. That one's gonna go down with like the Serapeum.
Yeah.
You keep coming up with theories and it's just like, nope. It doesn't work.
Yeah. I am going to try to put a video together of all that. The drone footage is just beautiful. And I have lots of footage that I took with the stabilized Osmo walking along. So that plus what Kyle got, plus the drone footage, plus some of the the shots that Ben got, I think I can put together something that just kind of goes over sort of what we talked about here. I can lay out all the stuff and, make a produced video out of it because it's fascinating. It just, there are no answers. And like irrigation, no. People driving in the same spot with carts, no. It being made 11 million years ago when the stuff was soft, nope.
Yeah.
People carving it by hand, I don't think so because there's too many of them and it doesn't make any sense. But you can't, like that one, you can't rule out. So that's still the best answer we have because it can't be completely ruled out by stuff we see.
That's true. Yeah. But they're all like these parallels.
Yeah.
Like why? I mean, I don't know. It kind of goes with the irrigation one. It's like, well, they could have carved it for irrigation. But then when you start, you're like, first of all, they're parallel.
Yeah.
No. And then they cut through high parts, and then the valleys are. So that doesn't work. You just have this ridge with a little cut through it. Irrigation.
Yeah.
No.
Nope. Unless those valleys were cut after they were made.
Yeah.
Like that.
I don't think so because you have plain ones where the ground is doing this and the track is just flat.
Yeah.
How do you explain that? How could that have eroded and the track remained untouched? That doesn't make sense. It had to have been made after the erosion made the undulating surface.
Yeah.
Otherwise, that water or whatever eroded the undulating surface would have eroded the track.
Mm-hmm.
So it can't be. We got to write these things down. We need a chart.
Yes.
I feel like we need to put the pins in the map.
Yeah. Can't be this. Yeah. All the disproofs. Man, yeah. So the only way you can say is somebody went out there and was just like, I'm going to carve a whole bunch of shit into the ground for no reason. That's the best explanation there is.
They'll all be like roughly the same width. And,
yeah. We're going to make them look like vehicle tracks.
Yeah.
But they'll actually be pretty much unusable as vehicle tracks. What? That's, yeah.
We can go way out there and just be like, it was giants with toy trucks.
Giant children, right?
Yeah.
Kids. Yeah.
That's it.
The other possibility, and this one is also more out there, is that sometimes something happens that makes the stone soft when it was hard before, and then it rehardens.
Still doesn't explain the flatness.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I'm serious. Like, that's the big problem. It has to be.
Yeah, and we already had arguments against the softness, at least in some ruts. We saw harder, like the basalt pieces that were cut through, right?
Yeah, literally.
Yeah.
Ground off.
So they look like they were cut
away.
through or ground away in some way. So it wasn't made in soft material. I never did find the one that I've seen it. I had there was an old photo where it looked like along the upper edge of the rut, there was splashing. I never could find it. I don't know because the guide told us they're everywhere. So we visited 2 major sites in this one particular area, but he's like, they're all over this landscape. So you could probably spend days, weeks exploring the landscape and finding sets of ruts and finding different, that's what I was going to also say is like, there's more evidence out there that will tell us things and probably disprove things, but we only visited 2 main sites. But that guy was like, they're everywhere. They're all over this stuff. Wow. And they don't seem to be going anywhere or coming from anywhere in particular either.
Yeah.
But that's why they're explained as irrigation. In some cases, I saw some writings where people were speculating that they had something to do with the Midas monuments that are in the area. They're like, oh, these people that lived here were building these monuments and they had guys carrying materials and quarries and bricks and stuff, and just like, from where to where? They don't go to monuments and they don't come from quarries. I don't know. Either way.
Yep.
A fascinating mystery. All right. Yeah, we need to wrap it up. Thank you guys so much for supporting the show. All of you that do. We really appreciate it.
Cheers.
Value for value model. If we give you value, you guys can give it back to us in multiple ways, but one way is through Patreon or PayPal. We appreciate it. And if you do join Patreon, we have extra content sometimes, early access often.
Yeah.
Yep. A lot of the bumper music is on there, so if you like Kyle's bumper tunes, there's a whole library of the entire song of the pieces of songs that he uses for bumper tunes in the Patreon. So join up. You can join for $1 a month, 108. And thanks to all of you that do that, and thanks to everyone that listens. We love you guys.
Always have.
Always will.
Good night, Adamu.
Get back to work.